Yes, welcome back to this episode of PE in Uganda. Today's presentation is about the Uganda Secondary School Curriculum. That is paper 1, 551, and it is based on helping the teacher facilitating to enhance students' comprehension and exam readiness in UNEB assessments. And this refers to senior 1 and 2. Some schools or some teachers have tried to expose the learners to this type of question, scenario items, and this tool wants to help them find ways or understand how they can help the senior 1s and 2s be introduced to this type of assessment. Then also it helps the teachers understand what is expected of them when they are coming up with these different tools or items. What should they include in their setting of these scenarios? Yes. So it is going to look at, we are going to look at the assessment framework, how the items are distributed in the different sections in this paper, that is paper 1. Then also the time allocation, which is under the competence-based curriculum. Learners previously were used to papers of 1 hour, 1.5, but this time round, in the competence-based curriculum, you will find that majority of the papers go for 2 hours, and this is because the learners are required to comprehend. They are given ample time to read, understand the text, integrate the different chapters that have been identified, and then have the ability to produce good work, or to produce work which is ready to use. But when you look at this item-based element of construct development of exams or items, they are a bit lengthy. They require the learner to read several times to understand the concept, to grasp the challenges, to correlate the tasks with the scenario, to understand the scenario where it has been set from. For example, if it is a community, which type of community? If it is if it is a school, which type of school? If it is a village, which type of village? So in this, we understand that the learners have to know how they are going to answer these items, and we need to help them be in charge of their learning. We don't allow cram work. We do not allow cram work in these exams. So the teachers need to tell the learners that they have to understand the concepts they are being taught. Okay, the learners have to understand the concepts they are being taught. And when it comes to their responses, the responses should show their competences. So even the teacher, when you are setting these items, that should be at the back of your head when you're coming up with these elements of construct. All right? Now, I'm aware that all of us here might be exposed to the UNEB paper. It has 2 sections. So if you're setting this paper for the seniors and senior 2s, it is also supposed to have 2 sections. All right? The learners need to understand that these 2 sections have core principles. Section A has core scenarios, and it is compulsory. All right? So you set 2 scenarios which are compulsory. These learners have to understand there are 2 items in section A which are compulsory. What are they looking out for? We need to understand that in section A, we have two items, and their core value focuses on first aid application. Okay, it looks at sports injury protocols. How do we administer first aid? How do we manage injuries? Then also in item 2, we look at fitness level diagnosis, because we look at physical fitness in senior 2. right? Then we also look at workout design. Teachers, remember that in Senior 2, when the learners are studying physical fitness, they have an element of developing a fitness plan, right? A simple fitness plan. So it doesn't mean that you have to wait until they reach Senior 3 and 4 for them to know how to develop a fitness plan. No. As early as Senior 2, a learner who's going to take a physical education in Senior 3 and 4, they should at least have the ability to understand how to develop a fitness plan. We shouldn't only focus on the practical and leave out these theoretical abilities of the learners to understand what is required of them. So if a learner comes from Senior 1 and 2, when they understand what is required of them when they're doing physical education, it also helps you, the teacher, to be in position to prepare your learners to be in good shape to answer these items. So those are the first two items. The first item we said is about first aid application. The second item is about fitness level diagnosis, testing of physical fitness. Okay? What is expected of the learners in item 1 and item 2 in the theory paper? The learner is expected to have immediate practical write-ups. So the learner should be able to integrate all the content they have studied and practically present it as work, not as notes, but as work. Okay? The learners also are supposed to know the diagnostic steps that should be carried out in case they are looking out for the levels of fitness amongst the population. It could be the community, it could be the players, it could be at home, it could be themselves, or it could be some data set presented to them from a given research. So we shouldn't limit our learners only focus on players when we are teaching them. We have to let our learners know that physical education is wider. Okay? It covers a bigger scope in the community. So a learner also understands that if I do physical education, I can become a doctor. Okay? Because here you can diagnose someone and know that this person's level of fitness is low. There's no other subject besides physical education that blends well with someone who wants to do medicine, because in medicine or in becoming a health worker, you deal with the body, you deal with the person. Even in humanities, it is the same. So the learners need to understand that in the compulsory section of item 1 and 2, we require them to also give scientific justifications of their answers. They shouldn't just make statements. They have to have scientific backups. For example, I would say maybe Betty did not warm up. That is why she got a muscle strain while she was playing volleyball. Okay? We know that if someone skips a warm-up, which is a body conditioning session, the body is not prepared to engage in that activity. So the level of elasticity of the muscles is limited. So that is why Betty would face maybe a muscle pull, or a muscle pull would occur, and this affects performance. So the scientific justification is, if someone does not warm up, or if Betty didn't warm up before she went onto court, her body was not prepared. How was her body not prepared? The range of movement or the elasticity in the muscles was limited. So that's why she got a muscle strain or a muscle pull. Our learners need to know these scientific justifications. So that is item 1 and item 2. Then we come to elective, which is section B. And section B is about applied contexts. In here, we are looking at item 3 and item 4 of real life scenarios. Members, we have to use real life scenarios that the learners can refer to in their daily life. Okay? And remember, here we are saying Senior 1 and Senior 2, introducing them to how the paper is structured, so that if they decide to take up physical education, they already know what is expected of them and what they're going to face. So the format is, the section is focused on areas like community sport. Okay? How do we engage the community in physical activities and sport? It's also focused on community development through sports and physical education, how can we use physical education and sport to help the community to develop, right? It's also focused on inclusion of disabled athletes or people with special needs, right? We need to let the learners understand that this section is about the real life issues we face or we deal with and how best we can incorporate them in physical education, or how we can use physical education to overcome those challenges. Again, it also looks at drug abuse mitigation in the communities, sexual immorality, unemployment, how to promote peace using physical education, how to solve conflicts. So the learner needs to know that when they're going for section B, they have to have that knowledge at the back of their head, but they must apply it in the form of competency, okay, based on the scenario. So what is expected of the learners in this section? The learners are expected to have the ability to write proposals that can be used, okay, to promote sport and physical education in communities. Then they are also supposed to have the ability to present community action plans in case they are being told that the community has non-communicable diseases. How do we use physical education and sports to overcome that challenge? Okay. Then again, the learners should have structured advisory write-ups. The learner should have the ability to advise using physical education and sports on the best way to go forward or to overcome the challenges that are present, right? The learner has to have the ability to use physical education to advise. It could be the school administration, it could be the village chief, LOC1 chairperson. This could be in their class. They could be the ones playing maybe a tournament and the learner has been put on a committee. It could be a festival. For example, in Uganda, we have the Physical Education Festival and they're preparing for this. How best can they prepare for it? So the learners have to understand that in physical education, paper 1, you must provide well-explained work. And we have 2 sections. Section A, it's compulsory with 2 items. I said earlier that item 1 requires first aid application. Section 2, which is injury management. Item 2 deals with fitness level diagnosis and having the ability to prepare a workout designed for a person, community, or yourself. Then we said section B has applied contexts. Okay, how do we use physical education and sports for community development, for promotion of peace, for inclusion of persons with disabilities. Then we look at how can we mitigate drug abuse, how do we mitigate sexual harassment, how do we reduce unemployment through the use of physical education and sports. All right? Okay. So this further explains that what are the core pillars of paper 1? What should a senior 1 and 2 understand about paper 1 in physical education? You as a teacher, you have to let the senior 1 know that paper 1 is focused on safety and injury management. They must understand, okay, how to clearly identify injuries, how to respond to those injuries, the emergency protocols. For example, PRISA, Dr. ABC or the BRAC, okay, CPR. They need to know when are those protocols used? When should we use them? How are they used? How are they applied? When they read the scenario, they should be able to identify when such protocols are used. Remember, in our curriculum in Uganda, it is competency-based. When the learners study in class, they are required to also go in the field and practice. Okay? They are required to go to the field and practice. So if they have studied the BRAC, let them go to the field and do these steps one by one. If they study PRISA, okay, PRISA is P is for protect. How do you protect the injured person or the injured part, right? How do you protect yourself as a first aid giver? All together. Then when you talk about rest, How do we rest the injured person or casualty? How do we rest the casualty? How is it done? Then when we come to ice, that is I, how do we apply the ice? What is the importance of the ice? Where do we put the ice? How do we, which steps do we go to include that ice or to apply that ice on the casualty or on the injured part? We have compression. The learner needs to know how this is done, but practically in the field, but in paper 1, they have to write in their first person tense. They are the ones doing that activity because the task would say, how do you help out? Okay? Because after observing, in case you are around, they want you to tell us, to present, to make a presentation of what you would do. So you have to write it, giving justification, and we said you have to use scientific justifications. We have E, elevation. How do you elevate? Why would you elevate? What is the importance of elevation in terms of injury management? Okay. Then we have referral. Remember, in first aid, we are not the professionals. We are giving the first care to someone who is injured. We are giving a hand so that this person has the ability to be found by the medical workers to pick it from there. And it also depends on the level of injury, right? Then we go to Dr. ABC or the BRAC, danger. How do you assess danger for yourself as a first aid giver and then for the casualty? Because you need to have the ability to assess, okay? Then response. Response is for the casualty. How would you assess the response of the casualty? Remember, you have to understand, the learner has to understand how these things are done. And teachers, we need to agree that we need to remember these protocols don't take minutes or hours. All this can be done in 1 minute because everything is done in microseconds, very fast, because you want to save someone's life. You need to remind the learners that in their head, they need to know that it's not something they do for 30. No. You assess very, very fast the danger. You assess very fast what you need to do to check the response. You go and check the airway, right? Then you check the breathing and then the saturation. The learners need to know this. How is it done? How is it important? How is it applied? Furthermore, when you do all these steps, right, you go and include the CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation. Okay? The learners need to know when do we apply the cardiopulmonary resuscitation. In this case, if the saturation is not there, then we have to go for CPR. We also have the AED, right? The defibrillators. How do we use them? The learners, if it is possible and they have access, they need to know how to use them. Okay? So here in CPR, the learners need to know 2 breaths, 30 compressions, practically and theoretically, and they should have the ability to explain scientifically, right? How these work. When you're giving the 2 breaths, you are supposed to pinch the nose of the casualty so that the air doesn't come out from the nose. You need to know these steps and logically explain them. Are we together? Then again, in the same section A, all right, item 2, it is about healthy living. We are looking at how health is the person or is the community or is whatever community we are being given. How do we find out the health status of the community and how do we promote healthy living amongst ourselves? So this includes the health and skill-related physical fitness components that we studied in senior 2, and in senior 1 this would be maybe exercise, rest and hygiene. We have the healthy bit there. Then we look at also skill development and diet. This is a chapter that senior 1s cover in 3rd term of senior 1. The training principles of fit, frequency, intensity, time, and type of training. So as early as senior 1 and 2, okay, senior 2, because some of these elements will be a bit complex for the senior 1s, but senior 2, they should understand the fit principle when they're developing the training design for the community or for a person. And they need to know why. Then the skill development and diet. This diet bit is, if someone is training, what should they eat? What should they consume? Right? It should be in line with healthy feeding. It should be in line with what they're exercising for or preparing for. If it is a team, if it is a person who wants to lose weight, if it is a person who is recovering from an injury, they need to know what they're supposed to consume. And of course, lastly, there is exercise prescription, where we said the learner should have the ability to develop a workout plan or draw a fitness plan or diagnose or whatever, but it should be in line with exercise prescription. As we are given medicine to take from doctors and tell you take 2 times 3, we can also prescribe exercise that run 3 times a week, then do some swimming 4 times in a week based on the person's needs and inadequacies. Of course, section B for it is about advocacy. Section B is about advocacy. Advocacy is focusing on sports design. Like, how do we design sport for everyone? We look at the football fields, we look at the courts, we look at the inclusivity of access to those different facilities. We look at the games that are being played. Where are they being played? Right? Of course, we have to look at solving equipment scarcity. Can our learners understand that through physical education, you can have improvisation? And if you are aware, you go back to the syllabus book, there is always improvisation included in the work that we're supposed to teach learners. So can our learners come back and understand the role of improvisation in everything that we are doing, right? Then we have community wellness. Of course, that we talked about it. Can we use physical education and sport to promote community wellness? Can we show the community the value of physical education and sports beyond just the jumping, the running, the winning, the performance? There is also that other aspect of public health, right? We can use physical education and sports as a tool to promote abstinence among the youth. We can use physical education and sports as a tool to reduce the levels of early pregnancy. We can use physical education and sports to be a campaign promoter of different values that we need in a community or society. And I think you have seen those who watch football during the kneeling when we are fighting against racial segregation. So all these, the learners need to understand how they can be impacted or they can be included in our society. Then we have ethics. Ethics, these are the principles that we promote in physical education and sport: honesty, respect, trustworthy, fair play, tolerance. I think in PE and sport, this is where we show and illuminate these ethics. You play with someone, let's say in rugby, they tackle you hard, but you remember that this is just a game. In football, someone tackles you hard, but you still extend an arm and you pull them up and say fair play, right? So all these, the learners need to understand that we can use this to advocate for the enrollment, for the promotion of physical education and sports in our communities, to ensure that everyone understands the impact sport has. Then we have youth empowerment. Okay, I think if all of us have been following sport, there's a Ugandan who is playing in, is it Denmark? Dennis Borgere. He has become a sensation. Okay, then we have Alan Okello, who is in Tanzania in Simba. He's also becoming something. Then we have our Uganda Cranes team. Whenever they go for the Commonwealth Games, they always put up a performance, excellent performance. All right, we have the Rugby Cranes. They are doing very well. So when we talk about youth empowerment, sport and physical education equip the youth with skills that they can feel that they can be self-employed. And youth empowerment also comes in the talents of the learners or of the youth that they have. Instead of the youth going to maybe take alcohol, abuse drugs, become idle, they can train football. They can train table tennis. They can train badminton. They go and put their skills to work. One of the chapters I love in physical education is about media and sport. And besides it being theoretical, this can help the learners come up with projects that they can do. All of us have phones at home. Our parents have phones at home. If this learner learns how to exhibit sports or physical education in a different lens that has not been seen before in a community, don't you think they can be empowered to provide a platform that can be used to promote physical education and sport in a different angle? So that is youth empowerment. ICT integration. PE is a laboratory for every other subject, be it humanities or sciences. Everything is embedded in physical education. It's us, the practitioners, who are supposed to advocate for it and let the public know what physical education is all about. Furthermore, we have what we call development and peace promotion. Physical education is the best tool for development. I think you have seen the facilities put up in Hoima after the construction of the Hoima Stadium. It has changed the whole region, even the area, right? Plus the oil which was found in that side. So it boosts development. Sport boosts development. And the reason why we need physical education in Uganda per se, it is to help in the professionalization. We need experts, right? We need professionals to start working in the physical education and sports industry. People who understand what it takes to run a football club, what it takes to manage a football ground, what it takes to manage a football entity, industry, football, but I would say sport, a swimming or an aquatic center, because that's where we are going, right? We need to have people who think beyond just the field aspects. We have these other managerial aspects. We have the research. Can we do some research on our African players, our Ugandan players, our food? Can we develop items for specifically our players that can enable them be better? But the learner has to come from senior 1, 2, 3, 4, understanding these aspects so that they can build up their point and be understood on a broader aspect. Then peace promotion. I normally use the example that many countries in Africa are enraged with war or with conflicts. And if you remember very well in Ivory Coast, when Didier Drogba had refused to play in one of the AFCON tournament qualifiers and told the government and the rebels and all this, that if you don't cease fire, I'll not come to play for a nation. And these people were able to come up to a truce and stopped fighting. We have seen the role of sport and physical education that it has played in the restoration of peace in war-torn areas. If you remember very well, we have northern Uganda where for a long period of time it was enraged with so many conflicts. But through physical education and sport, we have seen through the FUFA drum, people have got a chance to travel and be like, okay, they get impressed with the area, they get to visit. Okay, schools were in northern Uganda of recent for the ball game 2 hosted by Sacred Heart, okay, and Gulu High. So the learners, the teachers, the community, there's that cultural integration and understanding that comes with physical education and sport. So our learners from senior 1 and 2 need to understand these aspects. Also, in villages, we can use physical education and sport to promote peace. If there are 2 tribes or people engaged in a conflict, can get a football match and say, okay, due to our misunderstanding, to come into terms with whatever has happened, we shall organize a football game where all of us shall meet and agree on a thing or two to ensure that we come to terms with whatever is happening around us. All right, so we said paper 1, that is 551, for senior 1 and 2, has elements of construct. And these elements of construct don't go beyond 9 chapters, but these 9 chapters are all categorized. Okay. The first one is Introduction to Physical Education. This is advocacy. So this would be in section B when you're setting this item. Then we have what we call safety and first aid. This is in item 1, right? Then we have body conditioning. This is in item 1, which is safety. Then we have exercise, rest and hygiene. This one can fall in item 1 and item 2. But most times we remove the rest and hygiene and put it in safety. Then we get the exercise because it is more of healthy living. we put it in item 2, which is about healthy living, right? Then we come to skill development and diet. This is on health, right? We come to factors in performance of physical activities. This is health, because we want to find out why do some people engage in activities, why do some fail to engage in some activities. Further still, we come and we look at physical fitness. This is in health, okay? Agreeable and disagreeable behaviors. This is in advocacy. Then we come and look at leisure and recreation. That is advocacy. So specifically, senior 1 and senior 2, we have 9 theoretical chapters we cover. In senior 1, if you're going to give them maybe paper 1, which is an end of cycle paper, they would have 5 chapters that they will cover. That is at the end of the year. Okay, they will look at introduction to PE, safety and first aid, body conditioning, exercise, rest and hygiene, skills development, and diet. Then the senior 2s will have a bigger scope. They will have over 9 chapters, which I've mentioned. And the learners need to understand these chapters and where they fall. And you as the teacher, you need to know how to categorize these chapters. If you are coming up with a scenario or an item, it has to have more than 2 chapters integrated. So for example, if you are setting item 1, you will include safety and first aid, then you add body conditioning, and then you add rest and hygiene. That is safety. Then because this is senior 1, you put introduction to PE, it will be only that 1 chapter. Then because they have only covered that in senior 1. Then skills development and diet, that has 2 elements, so you can also use that as health. And maybe you can tell the learners do some simple fitness plan, because we encourage research. We also encourage experiences from the learners' environment. So to bring that very well, it will be very good in senior 2 when the learners have covered these elaborative chapters which are intertwined and related. You will find out that introduction to PE has a relationship with agreeable and disagreeable behaviors, has a relationship with leisure and recreation. Then you go to when you're setting, you go to the syllabus book and you look at the competences that the learners are supposed to have. Where there's knowledge, that's one you can skip. We normally want where there's skills, values, attitudes, and all that. I think we shall cover that in another day, right? And then the learners need to understand what is required of them when they are doing these chapters. Introduction to PE is about the philosophical foundation of physical education. You know, we distinguish the different commonly used terms in physical education and sports. It's about sports ethics, career paths. What would the learner become in case they study physical education? So they need to understand those principles and elements and be able to present them very well. Chapter 2 is about safety and first aid, and here we look at practical management of injuries, different injuries, and how we can execute Dr. ABC, Pricer, CPR, and other local substitutes. In case they are in a forest and they didn't carry a first aid box, what can they use? What are the available substitutes they can use or put up? Then we have body conditioning. This we all know that is the preparation of the body for the activities that one is going to take part in before and after. Normally, learners think that warm-up is the body conditioning, but we also have the cool-down. But the warm-up has different stages. Even the cool-down has different stages. In the warm-up, we have to emphasize that there's a pulse riser, there's a session of dynamic stretching, we have joint mobilization, we have general exercises, we have sport-specific exercises. Then we come to the main activity, that thing that person is going to do. After doing that activity, then we have a cool down, which has also 3 stages. We have immediate cool down, intermediate cool down, and late phase cool down. Learners need to know the importances of all that, and they should have the ability to precisely present it in a paper, all based on the item being set. Okay? Then we go further and we look at chapter 4, which will be exercise, rest, and hygiene. And this looks at the body system responses, the types of exercise. If someone exercises, balance exercise, what does it do? Strength exercise, what do they do? Endurance exercises, what do they do? Flexibility exercises, what do they do? What is their impact on the muscular, circulatory, and respiratory system? Then hygiene, we know that. What is the importance of hygiene? What is the need for us to hydrate? Why should we sleep? Why do we need a balanced diet? Remember, we said scientific justification. If you're talking about a balanced diet or balanced nutrition, why would someone eat proteins? The learner needs to explain that. Allow me use Isaac. Isaac will eat a balanced diet focused on proteins because he was injured maybe when he was playing volleyball. So for Isaac to recover properly, he needs to have more intake of proteins, which help in repair of damaged body tissues, because the major role of proteins is body building. That is a scientific explanation, right? That is a scientific explanation. And even the assessor, whoever is scoring that learner, will understand that there is a scientific justification for Isaac to eat proteins, and for the reason of that, he was injured. He's recovering from injury. Or we might say, maybe Isaac didn't have enough. Okay, let me use summary. Summary didn't have enough energy when they were spiking a volleyball, right? So how would you help? What diet would you give to summary to have more energy? We know that carbohydrates are the ones that provide energy. So the learner needs to focus their nutrition right up, saying that summary needs to take more carbohydrates. For example, they give examples of the carbohydrates. Could be maize, sweet potatoes, because we know sweet potatoes have the highest levels of sugars. Any athlete, anyone who's looking for energy, if you eat sweet potatoes, very good, right? Because there will be storage of enough glycogen, which will later be used during the games. Or when somebody is exercising, the body will be conditioned to utilize that glycogen somebody is getting from the sweet potatoes. Will somebody eat one? No, because somebody is playing sport, maybe he needs to have a quantified amount of sweet potatoes is going to eat, right? So that is a scientific justification, and the learners need to explain whenever they shouldn't just say eat fats. What is the role of fats? Eat vitamins. Why are the vitamins important? Hydrate. Why is hydration important? Right? We need water, but what is the use of the water? Okay. Then we have chapter 5. At times we teach these learners games, athletics, and gymnastics mechanics or movement concepts. It's for senior 1 and 2. These biomechanical principles in sprinting, throwing, jumping, gymnastics, etc. They help the learners understand the complex skills. Remember, in skill development, we teach about basic skills and complex skills. And the learners need to understand that these concepts are intertwined. It is like you are making a mat. One step leads to another. So the learners, when they understand that in throwing, what do I need? Maybe I need energy, but do I need energy per se, which is aerobic or anaerobic? I need maybe anaerobic, because when I'm throwing, it is just in 30 seconds, I'm done. It might even be a microsecond. You have thrown and the javelin has gone, or the discus has gone, or the shot put has gone. So there you need power. How do I train to get power? How do I eat to get that power? So the learners need to understand, the teachers need to let the learners understand these concepts, because when they appreciate, then they can clearly write proper work. Because some scenarios might have these games as indicators of what is missing, that maybe Jerry was a footballer, but he can't dribble. So you find out that maybe he's lacking reaction time, he's lacking agility, okay? He can't respond to a stimuli. So the dribbling, the learner needs to know the importance of dribbling. What physical fitness component goes with dribbling? Okay, if someone is going to eat, what will impact the muscles to either be fast twitch or slow twitch? So all that science, most times it might look like it's in depth, but it is basic. as long as the teacher can explain to the learner and they understand it. So as a teacher, you need to let the learners know that paper 1 in PE, one needs to have in-depth understanding of these games and physical activities. When someone's doing a push-up and a plank, what's the difference? One is a muscle endurance activity. The other one is a muscular strength activity. So teachers help learners understand these aspects because they use them in the fitness plan as they're developing that fitness plan, and also in the explanations. Then again, we need to let the learners know that we need community health and inclusive sports, that is advocating for games, for disabled learners. I think you've heard about blind football. Then resolving community conflicts via sports. I think this I've talked about it. If you get a chance to visit refugee camps, you'll see these being used as a way of creating peace in the communities and providing them with sanity. Okay. So all this we are discussing is preparing the learner for the major one of Senior 4. Okay. Let the learners know that we do not encourage rote learning, cramming. You do not produce notes. Please and please, learners are not supposed to reproduce the notes or the knowledge. They're supposed to integrate it and provide something which is good. It is 100% competence and application. We are evaluating the learner's ability to solve contextual real-life problems. Tomorrow, this learner is going to be maybe a minister for sports. They should have had interface with this. All right? Tomorrow, this learner is going to make a startup of a health center, okay, leisure center, recreational center. All this falls under physical education, public health. They need to know that, okay, if I open up a health center, recreation center, a gym, there shouldn't be beer next again. I should maybe have a juice making machine, okay? There shouldn't be pork. There shouldn't be beef. There should be some fruits, water. Are we together? So these are the concepts we want the learners to have, such that when they grow up, they appreciate. If a learner understands, even if they do not take a PE in Senior 4 and 3 or 3 and 4, at least when they grow up, they can still sponsor and advocate because they understood those small principles, why physical education is needed, okay? Because they can see these real-life solution problems. Most of us go to different offices, but you present your proposal and this person doesn't know what you're talking about. In fact, for them, they think whatever you're talking about is not necessary. You're like, we can forego that. And we have faced this challenge. But the challenge is physical education in Uganda has been on a low for the past, I would say, 45 years. It has been on the side. And the sports industry in Uganda is struggling because we don't have the professionals. The academia and research areas are also struggling because we lacked. Okay, even now, right now, we are still lacking. We need more of us to come up and take up these positions and sacrifice ourselves and promote physical education to be able to solve contextual real-life problems. That is why we are encouraged that when you are setting these items, let them be within the learner's environment, school, community, country, something they're exposed to, something they watch on TV, all right? Something close to them, such that when they interface it tomorrow, they can understand. Now, if I'm teaching in Kalangala Island, the place is surrounded with water, why can't you set scenarios that bring out that the usage of water, okay, swimming, canoeing, boat racing? Why would you want to set something for someone who's on the land? Okay, if I'm in a village, why can't you look at for scenarios in the village that can promote physical education and sport? Why do you bring an urban lifestyle? This learner does not understand about, has no relationship with. And I'm not saying you don't set it because we have televisions where this learner can interface with this environment. We have radios. We have so many things that help us come into terms or in contact with the different environments that are around us. Okay, but ensure that the learner has the ability to solve contextual problems. This means that direct definitions without linking to the provided scenario receive minimal credit. The learner needs to explain their work. The learner needs to present their work. Everything basing it on the scenario. Nothing else, nothing more. It has to be based on the scenario. The learner has to base their responses to the scenario, and the scorer has to ensure that that learner who has based their work on the scenario receives high scores. Whoever produces knowledge or work which is just from the textbooks will not be credited, because you're not solving anything. You're just telling us what you know in your head. You have not applied it. And that is why, if you're very keen and you have done some of these past papers of your NEB, you might find a question or a task requiring the learner to give only 5 points if you are very well keen based on the scenarios, challenges. Okay, not more than that. But it has to be elaborative, because the learner is adding there more than 1, 2, 3 chapters. So in senior 1 and 2, learners need to know this so that we develop them with that mentality and attitude and understanding. Then, of course, students must adopt the required role. The learners need to know that they are the ones taking charge of that, because they might be required to become a first aider. They can be required to be an assistant coach, an analyst. Okay, and the learner needs to know when they take up that role, what is required of them. I said that they answer in the first person tense. It is that person doing. You are the one doing that work. And the solutions they're providing should be specifically to that problem, to that challenge in the scenario. They shouldn't concoct. They shouldn't come up with things which are not in the scenario. So if you have set the scenario, let the learners be able to identify the indicators. Okay, we have indicators in the scenario we use, or in the items we use, and as per the current guidelines, tasks should not be related to each other. Each task should be independent of the other. It shouldn't be a follow-up. Okay, if in task A or 1, the learner was required to maybe identify the challenges and explain the cause, then in task B, they're supposed maybe to analyze how to improve the performance. Those two are not related. They're all different in their own terms. So if you are setting the tasks, they should be independent of each other. As we are about to conclude, we come to how the learners should structure their responses. Scenario diagnosis and identification. Step 1, or step A. The learner should state the primary problem. For example, muscle strain during volleyball, poor cardiovascular endurance in football. That is stating the primary problem from the scenario. It's not made up, but from the scenario. Step B, the learner has to highlight the contributing factors identified from the item scenario. This could be lack of warm-up, maybe improper shoes, it could be fatigue, right? It could be maybe dehydration. The learner should read the scenario and identify the challenges. Okay. Then in 2, execution and scientific rationale. How do they bring out the scientific rationale and the execution? This is step C. The learner should provide chronological, practical steps, exact exercises. So if you have the person lacks strength, and then you give us an exercise which is improving reaction time or agility, then there's a challenge there. So our learners need to identify this as early as senior 1 and 2, in case they have covered that chapter. Okay. First aid procedures. You can start from referral, then elevate, then compress, or mix them up. These steps have to be taken in their order. The first thing is protect. The second one is rest. The third is ice. Okay, then compress, then elevate, then refer. That is the chronological order. Okay, then when you're going to exercise, or if you're developing a fitness routine, maybe for 2 weeks, the first thing would be week 1. The next one is day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, up to Sunday. The next one, fitness components, like that. Then the fit, then the rest, then the duration. Okay. Okay, then below that, you can write maybe the nutritional advice, or you can also develop a table for the nutritional advice on specific days based on what you want to present. Then step D, the learner should justify why each step works using physical education principles. Okay, why should we warm up? Warm up increases muscle elasticity. How does warm up increase muscle elasticity? The temperature of the blood increases, and blood runs around the whole body, right? Lubrication of the joints happens. So the learner needs to know how to use physical education principles from you, the teacher. The facilitator. For this case in Uganda, we are facilitators, we are no longer teachers. Okay, and you need to know how to apply this. Then we look at mapping action verbs to answers. The learners need to know how do they, which verbs do they use based on the task they can be asked. Make a detailed write-up. The required answer or format would be structured report or guide. And this report should have a heading. They should write a problem statement, got from the item set. It should have a step-by-step plan, safety measures, and it should have a conclusion. This is what they're supposed to do. Then, of course, they might be asked to advise the community or team. It could be an advisory letter or an action plan. They should have clear, actionable points, having benefits of each with local resource integration. I think we understand that. In case something is not available, what can they use to ensure that there is sanity or there is improvement in the challenges being faced in the locality? If they are asked to design a training schedule, in times we tell them 1 week, 2 weeks, the required format would be maybe having a time-bound program. 2 weeks it shows and what the person or the team will be doing. This should have the core drills, the exercises, the sets, the reps, the duration, the diet advice, right? As we all know. This is needed. Of course, they can also be asked to analyze fitness or an injury. This is a diagnostic summary as a required answer. They should be able to identify and pinpoint that in case someone feels a sharp pain or a sharp pull in the muscles, contraction, that will be a muscle pull, and they have to use it as a qualifier for their answer, right? And this means that they need to include a symptom identified. Why would you say it is a muscle pull, not a muscle strain? Why would it be a muscle strain and not a muscle pull? Why would it be maybe a fracture? Why would it not a dislocation? Things like that. So, and then they should identify the affected muscles or joints with immediate and long-term care. So they should know that what is required to be used in that case, in case they know that the injury. And of course, we come and look at phrasing the workflow. The first one would be dissect prompt. Identify the target persona. Is it a team? Is it a person? Okay. Identify the context. It could be a community, it could be a sports area, it could be a village, it could be a school. And the core challenge in a scenario, there are always those outstanding problems or challenges that need to be looked at. Then number 2, the learner needs to first outline the actions that will be taken based on what they have dissected. This is developing a chronological practical step in maybe offering first aid or in offering advice. What needs to be done, because one step will lead to another step, okay? Then we come and look at the fit workouts, how those workouts follow each other. In case one wants to improve their endurance, what are the type of workouts they have to do, for how long, how many times, how should they rest, what should they eat. Then they should add a rationale. We said these are the scientific justifications. They need to explain, right, the benefits. They need to explain the safety precautions for each action. Why would someone walk with a whistle? Maybe in case there are increased gang violence cases in the community. Some villages advocate for everyone in the community to have a whistle. You blow it and you get help, and you save one moving around with a whistle. Others have WhatsApp groups. So these are the things learners come up with interface in their homes and communities. They can be able to use them in their papers or in their responses, not only in class. Okay, and tomorrow when they become leaders or service people or civil workers, they know what to do because they already interfaced it with it in school, and they know the benefits of each. Of course, they have to conclude, that is, they have to provide a long-term preventive measures and expected health outcomes. And this conclusion most times has to relate with a scenario to help out in relating your work or the learner's work for the scenario to the item. So as early as senior one, the learners know what they need to do and what they need to present. Finally, how do teachers facilitate the learners? Okay, in physical education, we help our learners through practical integration. Everything we teach theoretically can be done practically. Everything can be done practically. Introduction to PE, learners can make presentations, they can make magazines, they can make so many things. They can do role play. One becomes maybe a fitness instructor, another becomes a sports scientist, another becomes a coach, another becomes a doctor, becomes a lawyer. And they come and present on behalf of the class or in front of the class and tell them why it is important for one to study physical education. In Uganda, we have very few sports lawyers. We have very few sports researchers. We have very few people working in the sports industry who are qualified as physical education practitioners. And we all know the current challenge we are facing in Uganda as physical education teachers. Okay? So we need to practically integrate everything. Of course, first aid, body conditioning, you teach theoretically, they go to the field and do it. That is the practical integration. So that everything comes in their head, right? They understand that, okay, we did this because that was the pulse raiser. We did this because that, and the body can show them, they can feel it. Then we have what we call the learners understanding the dissection drills. For example, in body movement concepts, and then gymnastics, and then the different games we play. Okay, we need to give the learners the ability to understand this. If you see the learner cannot target the ball, they can't respond to the ball coming, reaction time. So you tell them, if that was a scenario, how do you help yourself? Maybe I go and learn how to respond to the ball. Okay. If the learner cannot run for more than one lap, they diagnose themselves. Then you ask them. Then, in case it was a scenario in the paper, how would you help yourself? Can you develop a fitness plan for yourself? Yes, they do something simple. And then the learner appreciates. So when they come to the paper to do this theoretically, they already have experienced it practically. Of course, we have project-based learning, senior 1 and 2, do one project, which is maybe a simple project like previously discussed by Madam Joan, who elaborated on project learning. So the learners can also learn from the projects, solving community challenges. And this helps them in section B. They come and look at these things and have the ability to integrate them in their work they are presenting in this theoretical paper. Okay. And finally, we conclude with that. This has been a presentation to help teachers and learners to be able to prepare for UNEP success. And we want to focus on practical application of physical education, clear answer formatting from the learners and from the facilitators or teachers. And then we want the scientific rationale. Okay, the learners need to understand that PE is scientific. They need to explain scientifically whatever they are doing or whatever steps they have taken in item 1, item 2, item 3. Okay, because scientific justification in this case means evidence. We need evidence why whatever you have said works.